Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings. The NFL. Football. Yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller, along with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, how are you?
I'm doing great. Let's do this thing. Bears week.
Bears week. This is about as big as it gets for the NFC North here. And I've spent the last hour or so looking back at a couple of Mitch Trubisky games. And my takeaway, Sage, is that Matt Nagy is everything that he is billed to be as far as an offensive mind, and that this team has put a lot of weapons around Mitch Trubisky. What has been your observation about him so far in year 2 of his NFL career?
Well, I'm impressed. You know, I watch the Bears every single week. I do that radio show for The Score on Tuesday mornings. And so I've gotten to watch not just Mitchell Trubisky as he has grown, but I've seen this offense, grow and change. And they keep adding a few new things every week. They do so much. They put so much pressure on multiple positions of a defense, and they've got really good players. I tell you what, they've got a group of receivers. I feel like it's like Kansas City light, you know. I mean, their Burton is not as good as Kelsey, the tight end, and Taylor Gabriel's not quite Tyreek Hill, but if Kansas City is an A, then Chicago's sort of an A- because they have a whole bunch of just really good weapons, not great players, but a whole bunch of really good players that are smaller, they're really quick. And they're going to be a matchup issue for the Minnesota Vikings this week.
So what have they done to put Trubisky specifically in a good position to cover up some of his weaknesses? Because when I watch, I see yards left out on the field sometimes with him. I see some throws that are just inaccurate, that maybe he's not setting his feet at times, or just doesn't have elite accuracy for a guy that was drafted pretty high. But yet, if he gets the ball in the hands of his playmakers, they seem to create a lot of yards, especially Tariq Cohen coming out of the backfield. So what has Nagy done that you've seen that's helped him out?
Well, they don't do very much of that traditional under center, with the play action and those types of things, or just straight drop back under center. And, in the history of sort of football, generally you start from under center in a new offense, and then you sort of grow from there. You start with the precise footwork for the 3 and 5 and 7 step game, and you really work on your footwork for years. It's sort of a never ending thing with timing and with concepts and with the reads and that footwork, and your feet tell you where to go with the football, right? So, but they have sort of skipped that a little bit, and then because of that, sometimes he sort of has hot feet back there, and he might throw a route that should be a 1-hitch throw on 3 hitches. And, they haven't mastered that sort of basic foundation of a traditional like West Coast offense, which this is you'd probably think a version of the West Coast offense, right? And so, what they do though is they spread you really laterally with all these, whether it's jet sweeps or shovel passes or the zone read that's more lateral with some RPO type of stuff. They do a lot of quick outs when there's running plays on, and then they have these quick guys who, if you get the ball in their hands in space, I mean, they're really hard to take down. Gabriel and Cohen and even this kid Miller and now Allen Robinson, all those guys can really take it to the house. You have to get the ball in their hands one-on-one with a linebacker. They beat a safety. They're very explosive team. So it's a lateral passing game that, the explosiveness of the players is really what makes it dangerous.
The Purple Podcast draft time fans would remember us talking about Anthony Miller, who is a really good prospect coming out and has made a big impact so far for the Bears. When I've been going over what Mitch Trubisky has done this year, it's a really interesting stat sheet because when you look at the game against Tampa Bay and the game against Detroit, they really pump up his stats. And that's the worst defense in the league and a team that clearly just doesn't want to play football anymore. And I wonder if you subtract those, what you have with Trubisky, it looks to me more like a guy who would be in the middle of the road as opposed to someone who has a 100 quarterback rating. Now, maybe you could do that with a lot of different quarterbacks, take away their best games, but his have come against teams that are much worse on defense than the Minnesota Vikings. And I feel like Sage, from watching, especially the way the Jets blitzed him a lot, that's what we're going to see from Mike Zimmer, is that he's going to treat Trubisky similarly to how he handled Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I think they'll do a couple things. And again, going back to what I was talking about with they've sort of skipped that sort of basic version of their offense. What I do see with Trubisky sometimes is he might miss a blitz. Because, there's so many things that he's having to read that they just sort of feel like they'll get the ball out before, an unblocked linebacker is going to get to him. And so that might be something that Mike Zimmer does, is try to confuse him. He's still a young quarterback. He still hasn't mastered, every blitz, in the book. And I think this offense, they just sort of say, we're going to get the ball out. We're going to have enough wide receiver screens and jet sweeps and different zone read things that teams won't want to blitz against us. And so, teams don't as much. So maybe that's something that Mike Zimmer does. The other thing is maybe they play less man-to-man coverage. I think they're actually going to play a lot of zone in this game. Can Mitch Trubisky go 12 plays on a drive and execute and not throw a bad, make a bad read or make a bad throw, and just sort of slowly execute down the field, make him do that. Because it seems like more often than not, especially if you watch that Lions game, there was a lot of big plays in that game. He'd hit a guy in a man-to-man route, they would go for 35. They go for 45. They go for 25. You play a lot of zone defense, have all eyes back at the quarterback. There's just fewer big plays in those situations. Everyone rallies to the football and tackles and those types of things. So that's what I wonder, if they'll play a little more zone. They've been playing a little more zone lately. I feel like the Vikings have. Try to keep the ball in front. And again, we talked about the Rams. I don't think Xavier Rhodes matches up very well against Taylor Gabriel. Mm-hmm. He likes bigger receivers, and these Bears have a lot of really small, fast guys, very similar to the Rams. And obviously we saw what the Rams did to the Vikings defense. So I wonder if they're going to play a little more zone in this game.
So I also noticed that Allen Robinson, now if you're going to match him up, Xavier, with one guy, it's probably Robinson, that he looks like he's back. That he missed last year with an injury for the Jaguars, but before that, he was a really good and unheralded wide receiver. But now he looks like he's got some explosiveness off the line of scrimmage for him, and that could be the guy that they have Xavier on, or they could continue to play more zone. I'm curious. Just before I ask you more about Trubisky. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say if they do match up, I agree with you. I would think the pilot would be Allen Robinson. That would be Xavier Rhodes' guy all over the field. I would think Waynes would probably go with Taylor Gabriel. Mm-hmm. That puts whoever the Vikings' third guy, and they've been sort of rotating it out on the kid Miller, who's a good team. On top of it, by the way, Burton's a good receiver, the tight end. And then now, they put Cohen out there sometimes in almost like a four, they'll go 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and then they put Cohen in the slot. Now you got a fourth guy who's going to match up with him. That's going to be more of a linebacker. So, Anthony Barr is going to have his, chasing skills on and be on point this week, because he's going to have to match up with Tariq Cohen on multiple occasions.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, is the way that they use their running backs. Howard is just this big, bulky dude who can run over people, and Vikings fans remember him from his massive run to start the game in 2016 that pretty much gave you the feeling that wasn't going to be a great night in Soldier Field as soon as he did that against that Vikings defense. But the way that they use the running backs, I noticed that even on a 3rd down and long, that they will send Cohen out as a wide receiver and even throw down the field to him, that they don't seem to be afraid to use him in so many different ways. And it seems to me, Sage, like this is the most modern way that a team can use their running backs, and something that the Vikings want to do with Dalvin Cook when he's 100% too, is use these guys as wide receivers.
Yeah, and I don't think Cook, quite has that same receiver skill set that Cohen has, and I think they use him a lot. The Bears' weapons are sort of like I don't know if it was, the Princeton basketball team back in the day, and there really wasn't a center. There's a bunch of guards, and they cut to the hoop, and they were fast, and they were hard to guard, and they kept moving, and everyone was sort of played as a guard, and those, that type of basketball, type of team. This Bears offense is very similar to that. And over time, you get these matchup issues, and they'll have, both running backs in the game. Sometimes Howard will end up being sort of a lead fullback on a toss sweep. And sometimes they'll, motion somebody, out, and they'll be in the slot, or somebody will motion back into the backfield, or there'll be a jet sweep, of some sort with Tariq Cohen or Taylor Gabriel. I mean, they do a lot of things with this offense. And I think, if you look at the positions, my guess is it's not your traditional, fullback, tailback, X receiver, Z receiver, Y receiver. My guess is that it's a mix of, all these different sort of X's out there. Tariq Cohen and even Taylor Gabriel, they'll toss in the ball at the running back position. They're just very multidimensional, and they have a lot of Devin Hesters out there.
The other thing to watch too from this team is just Trubisky running, and they'll even use option type stuff with him. But when things break down, he can really make plays. There's a play that he made against New England where he's rolling to his right, and they get pressure on him, and he spins back, goes all the way across the field, and runs for a touchdown. This is, I think, the biggest rushing threat from a quarterback that the Vikings have faced in a really long time.
He is, I'm going to go ahead and assume he's the third leading rusher on this team. I don't know if you want to look that up real quick. I'd like to see that and see what, but he usually runs for, 40, 50, 60 yards in games. I mean, he always has these runs. They use him down near the goal line a ton. That's a major challenge, for defense. We didn't have a running quarterback, and he does a great job of not just getting maximum yards, but, he makes guys miss, good defenders, linebackers and safeties who are good tacklers. He can make those guys miss. And then after that, he does have that speed. I don't know what he ran at the combine. My guess, he probably ran a 4.6 or something at the combine. He is a very fast, quick foot, type of athlete, and he's definitely a threat. So then you add that to the mix with all the zone read stuff and shovel pass stuff, and when teams are, dropping back and he decides to take off, he's a threat with his legs. He is one of those guys that has had really big time sort of combined, total offense, not just passing yards, but total offense. He's very much a threat, in particular in the red zone and on third down.
Well, you were very good on both guesses. He is the second leading rusher for the Bears. He actually has more rushing yards than Cohen does. 320 yards at 7.8 yards per carry, and he ran a 4.67 at the NFL Combine. So he is quick. I think he plays faster than a 4.67 guy, but it's not even that. He's quick. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a wide receiver that runs a 4.67, you think might have slow feet. He does not. These guys they put him up and they put him down, with their feet, and he's got very quick feet, and he's definitely a threat to be reckoned with. What'd you say, 390 yards or something? 320, yeah.
320. So you're talking about a season with, maybe up to 600 yards rushing. You don't see that a lot in the NFL, in particular a guy who's now thrown for over 300 yards in 3 or 4 games this year.
Yeah, he rushes about 5 times a game, and several of them have been really big plays. Had a 39-yard rush this year, a 46-yard rush last year. Do you have a favorite running quarterback ever?
Ooh. Well, let's think back to Michael Vick was drafted my year. When he was really running. Wow, that was fun to watch. Shoot, I'll give my man Seneca Wallace a little bit of love.
Yes.
My Iowa State guy. When he was at Iowa State after me, I'd watch these games. I'd be like, I hope he takes off on this passing play. I don't care if it's 3rd and 10. He really could scoot, and again, a very quick guy. I grew up with Randall Cunningham was a great runner. Mark Brunell was, I think, an underappreciated good athlete. He was
sneaky athlete.
He was Steve Young light.
Mm-hmm.
They were obviously both lefties, but very accurate thrower, threw a beautiful ball, and he was a pretty dang good runner. I'm trying to think of who else. You know who my least favorite good runners are? Guys like Tim Tebow.
Uh-huh.
They gain yards with their legs, but it's not fun to watch. It's just sort of, works his way down the field. Now it's effective, but it's not pretty to watch. Watching Michael Vick run when he was young in those first 4 or 5 years, that was something else.
So Cunningham, you know that I played a lot of video games as a child. Cunningham was the original Vick. So Vick is famous for the 2004 video game where people literally like had to make rules that you couldn't use him because he was so unstoppable. You'd roll out and then you just run. But Randall Cunningham was like that on video games before, so that was always my favorite. And
Randall Cunningham was one of he was like the prettiest runner of the whole group. I mean, it was a gazelle. He was so long and lanky and again, a different runner than like a Trubisky or Michael Vick.
Right. There were just arms and legs flying everywhere like a giraffe. My sneaky runner was Jim Harbaugh. I loved how much he used to run, and just looking it up now, he was always like 200-300 yards a year, and of course, like leading the league in fumbles too. But he was
and concussions.
Right? Yeah, he was like a find a way guy, and sometimes that could be detrimental to him too. So
yeah, he was a competitor. He was one of those guys that he was all in, and not a guy that he didn't slide very much, or he'd like slide and hope the other guy hit him so he could get in a fight with him. Harbaugh, yes. Harbaugh was looking to get in a fight with somebody on that field.
Yes.
Including his coach.
We really lack that. Like, I saw Aaron Donald going after the lineman for Seattle for hitting him a little bit late out of bounds toward the end of that game, and I feel like it used to happen so much more that you would have those players who are always looking to fight someone, and that has just sort of gone away in the NFL. Like,
listen, because the $22,000 fines they get aren't really worth the one punch where you might break your hand, so.
That's right.
Yeah, right. So I think, I just think that, and there's so much on the line that you just, you have to not have that short fuse. And, those guys that have those short fuses, man, they get fined, and that is no fun. You realize quickly after one of those things, punching somebody or getting into a fight after somebody else's late hit is not going to help you out at all.
Yeah, but I miss it. I do miss it. I at least hold me back guy. Like Harbaugh would be like a hold me back guy. Like jumps up and goes after the lineman sort of get in front of him.
Nothing was actually going to happen. Yeah.
Everybody knows that. Everybody knows the hold me back guy. I'm curious what you think about the overall strength of this Chicago Bears team, because when I'm looking through their schedule and what they've done so far, and this goes for the Vikings too, they just don't have good wins. They don't have a single win against a team that's above 500. And the same thing can be said for the Minnesota Vikings. It's, to me, kind of a prove-it game for both of them, that they've both beat the crap out of the Lions, who just don't seem to care anymore, and they both took care of business against the Jets, the Cardinals. Chicago beat the Bills pretty handily. But the only decent win that Chicago has is against Seattle, and that's not even a 500 team.
Yeah, but they did play the Patriots well, and I think the Patriots are a good football team. They barely beat the Cardinals, and the Cardinals stink. And they don't have any great wins. If you look at, their schedule, they might have seems like one of the easier schedules in the league. Now, it helps that, whenever you're the best team leading your division, your schedule's actually easier. Well, why? You're playing against, the worst teams where, the Lions look at their schedule and go, man, everyone's really good. Well, everyone's better than they are. So it makes the schedule, harder. So yeah, after the Vikings, the Bears have the Lions. They stink. The Giants, they stink. The Rams, they're really good. The Packers, they're somewhere in the middle. The 49ers not very good, and they play the Vikings again. So, their two toughest games, obviously, are these Vikings games, and I think against the Rams. I think those are the best teams they play the rest of the year, and they've got a very favorable schedule. They're healthy. Khalil Mack is back healthy. Allen Robinson is back healthy. This is a team that's dangerous. I tell you, I watch them every week. They're a dangerous football team, and I wasn't a believer early on. They were doing some good things, but I still had them as probably the third or fourth best team in this division. They're a very good football team. And if their defense can improve and play a little bit better, this offense is very multidimensional and very tough to cover. And they could go pretty far this year.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
So question for you on the Vikings defensive side. So Andrew Sendejo has been out quite a bit, and Anthony Harris has filled in his spot. Harris has played really well. Are you of the side of, hey, you shouldn't lose your job just because you're injured, you're the starting guy, or, maybe it's a small sample for Harris, or are you like stick with the hot hand or stick with the backup guy that's played pretty well? How do you look at that?
I think what you do is you sort of play, you have to judge, is the guy that came in and played, is he playing better than the guy that was playing before? And that's just the way it goes. It's always a competition. And other than maybe the quarterback position, if some quarterback struggles, if Tom Brady struggles a little bit for 2 games and gets hurt for a half and somebody comes in and plays really well, you're not going to take out Tom Brady the rest of the season, no matter how well that guy plays, right? But on defense, at a safety or a linebacker or something, or even an offensive player, if a backup guy comes in and produces more, and NFL basically it's a production business. And are you producing more? Are you getting more tackles? Are you creating more, defense or whatever for your team? If you're doing that and it starts off as one game, it's a hot situation for one game, but you're talking about 3, 4, 5 games. Now you're talking about a level of consistency. And if you're consistently playing better than the previous player, I think you should stay in.
Yeah, and I kind of look at Andrew Sendejo as coming off that injury last year that happened in the divisional game. He just really hasn't been the same guy, or he wasn't early on. And when the Vikings have turned around their defense, it's mostly been with Anthony Harris in there. That George Iloka got his shot, and then Mike Zimmer benched him, and Harris has done a great job. He's never somebody that we look at as being the most talented guy, but he's really intelligent. And maybe you could speak to this too, that the guys that I run into with the level of IQ, the ones who go from undrafted to starting, that's usually what it is. It usually comes down to the guy really understands where he's supposed to be and when he's supposed to be there, and he can make up for some of the physical shortcomings. Yeah, no, I think he's a good player. And by the way, Sendejo is one of those, I believe, undrafted guys too, right? Yep. So both those guys are smart players. Sendejo is a hitter. That's one of his strengths. He's not the best cover guy. He's not always great even in the safety position because he doesn't have, great speed, combine type speed and those sort of, tangible things, but he's just a grinder, will hit anybody and hit people hard. He's one of those guys that gets lined up to the right spot and gets people lined up and is sort of an enforcer out there. Now, Harris is not that type of player. Has a different skill set and maybe he's savvy in a different way. Maybe he's not quite as aggressive as a hitter, but also he doesn't miss as much and then sometimes get exposed for a long run, like say that Carolina game last year when Cam Newton, made a miss in the hole, Andrew Sendejo. So, they're different players and you got to figure out what you really want and need, as a defense too. Do you want to have that sort of physical, presence of hitting guys hard over the middle like Sendejo, or do you want to have guys maybe it's a little more sure tackler, not the hitter necessarily, but we'll get things down and keep the ball in front of them. Yeah, I feel like because of the penalties that Sendejo took early in the year, and then he puts on a hat that says "Make football violent again," which kind of insinuates to me that he's not going to stop trying to take people's heads off, and that there's a little bit of a target on his back. There's some liability there with him that does not go along with Anthony Harris, and that makes me wonder if they will stick with Harris. Where do you stand on paying Anthony Barr, by the way? Because he's been out the last couple of weeks, and they haven't taken a step back at all. Of course, they haven't exactly played the Los Angeles Rams these last few weeks, but the value of what Anthony Barr does in that position, I just don't think it's as much as he's going to want to get paid.
Yeah, and you can't pay everybody, and so the question is, can they think they can draft somebody? There's a good linebacker draft, and maybe they would pick somebody up even the second or third round that maybe is a little bit better cover guy that is athletic, maybe doesn't do all the things that Barr does. Maybe they mix and match. They pay Gideon a little bit more on even nickel situations if it's a certain type of team or certain type of back or tight end. For a matchup, and then other games you play maybe you said whoever they draft, a smaller linebacker or some sort of safety type of player who can do some of that coverage stuff Anthony Barr does. And so the question is not just should they pay him because of how good he is, but should they pay him because it's going to be expensive, and can they find other ways to possibly even improve on that position, whether it be free agency, draft pick, or even a combination of a couple players sort of filling that role.
Yeah, I think that's the one that they're going to have to look at and say, like you said, you just can't pay everyone. And if Trey Waynes has a really good second half of the season, he's a guy that you're going to want to extend for a long-term contract, and then it becomes very difficult when you're paying a quarterback what you're paying. And if Barr was a 10-sack guy, I'd be saying, yeah, you have to sign him up right now. But that position in the league right now, I don't think carries as much value as he's going to want.
Well, I tell you what, and it's definitely I have a few concerns Vikings wise from the draft picks of the last couple of years. Mike Hughes was looking great. I mean, he was looking like a guy who was going to be a starter on this football team, and was going to be this is a guy that could be almost a franchise corner. He's extremely explosive, is making a lot of really good plays, and I was seeing the improvement. And then he tore his ACL, and same thing with Dalvin Cook last year. Man, he's so explosive, and he has such great ability, but again, he's been hurt a lot in his first 2 years, right? So that's a concern, because I'd like to see Mike Hughes push maybe Xavier Rhodes, and I'm not trying to make Xavier Rhodes expendable, but maybe we can take that Xavier Rhodes money and give it to Trey Waynes if we feel like he's a better player, or he can sit in a Trey Waynes spot and him and Xavier can be 1-2 and not have to pay, Trey Waynes. And so, that's a concern. The last couple of years, they're draft picks who look like really good players, but they obviously have some early injury history. When
they drafted Hughes, I did wonder if he was meant to let Trey Waynes walk eventually, but then you bring up a good point about Rhodes, that as excellent as he is as a player, he's approaching 30 years old, ancient, I know, but corners that staying at that level of play when you're a 6'2" corner, staying that quick into your 30s might be kind of tough. And if and
he doesn't match up great, with those smaller receivers. We saw that in that Rams game earlier this year. We'll see how he does it with the Bears, but he's a guy that likes another big physical wide receiver. So yeah, he'll match up well with Mike Evans down in Tampa, or Jordy Nelson. He was great against Jordy Nelson for the most part, or probably even Devontae Adams. He's good versus the bigger guys, but you get those really quick, smaller guys who can really burn. He doesn't necessarily have that top flight speed. It doesn't seem like to me anymore. And Waynes is sort of more of that guy to match up with the Taylor Gabriel, and in particular in this division. I said you got the Bears who have all these super fast guys, and so yeah, there's certain types of receivers he matches up against well, and other types that he doesn't. And the question is, what type of defense does Mike Zimmer want, and who does he have to play 2 times a year, in particular in this division?
So when you were watching football over the weekend, was there anything else that stuck out to you? Because I have one more thing that stuck way out to me to bring up with you, but was there anything that caught your eye over the non-Vikings watching football this weekend?
David Montgomery, our running back at Iowa State, should not have gotten suspended for the fight that they got into against.
Was that the jump punch? Was he the guy that jumped around the ref?
He got punched, and then he came back after the guy, and the Baylor linebacker literally jumped around an official, right past his ear, and punched our running back David Montgomery in the helmet. By the way, it's always a smart move to punch another guy in the helmet. That's always the team. So the hand surgeon, he loves that, by the way, or he or she loves that because that's a great way to break a hand or break a finger. So Montgomery then came after him, and they both got tossed out of the game. And we had a sort of a real brawl. I was actually at the game. It was about 20 degrees. It was freezing, but there was like a legit. I mean, a cop ran onto the field. I was like, man, which was a topic of conversation in the state of Iowa. This like should have that cop gone on the field or not? I mean, he's got a taser next to him on him. I mean, we want to talk about things getting out of control. Is that his responsibility, to go on the field? Should the officials and the coaches, separate it? So, we had a seriously interesting fight at Iowa State, and it was I hadn't really seen that. You see scuffles, of course, all the time, but that was a legit, I guess 22-man plus the officials and whatever coaches around the field fight in the middle of the football game. That was interesting.
I'm going to say no. I don't think that the cop should run onto the field at that point. I think that you got to let that thing play.
I think it's a bad idea.
I think it's bad for him, right? Everyone else has pads on.
Let's just say. So here's how we broke it down. One, does any player, anyone out there in the fights, do they really have a chance to really get injured?
Right.
Right. Almost everyone's wearing a helmet in their pads. It was during the play. Right. So really there's no chance of severe injury, which you like to think that either the other players and or the coaches, whoever could get that, officials get that separated. Two, what if a player accidentally punches a cop? Right. What happens there? I mean, does the Baylor player, when he tries to punch Montgomery and actually punches a cop or something, does he spend the night in jail in Ames, Iowa?
Right.
I mean, is that assault of a police officer? Right. I mean, that's where it gets interesting. And I don't know how that whole. We were going to get this guy, this John Quinn, this former Iowa State quarterback, actually back in sort of the early '80s, late '70s. He is a cop in Des Moines, and so we're going to get him on the radio maybe next time and go through, what is the thinking there, and who hires the cop? How come in college football we have state troopers, and in Texas they have Texas Rangers or whatever, but we don't do that in the NFL, right? We don't. It's a whole different. You don't see the state troopers next to Mike Zimmer. It's a different deal. So it brought up a whole something. That I'd never thought about, a cop running on the field during a fight.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I don't think I've ever seen that before. The thing I have for you is I would like to officially welcome Matt Barkley into your fraternity of the journeyman quarterback, because the thing he was missing was his one shining moment, and he got it this weekend. A 117 quarterback rating, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns in a blowout win in the Meadowlands, beating the New York Jets. He checks off every other box. He's been with 6 teams, including a second stint, as we always look for, in Arizona. And he just needed a good game. He had never really had a good game until this weekend. So congratulations, Matt Barkley. You are a journeyman quarterback.
Yes, and not only that, welcome to the club, Matthew. But if you continue on this track that you're on, you have a really good chance, if you can put another good performance together, maybe a couple more this year. Next thing you know, you might find yourself in the league for like another 12 years. Cause you know who this happened to? The guy that you beat, Josh McCown. Josh McCown was completely out of the league. He was coaching high school football. He was playing for the Hartford Colonels or whatever. I don't even know what the team's name was.
UFL,
and then he got signed and he got signed back with the Chicago Bears. And he played really well in some random week 16 game at the end of the season, dunked one on the goalpost, and he was back, and he made it in the league for another 8 or 10 years after that or something like that. So maybe Matthew Barkley can copy the great Josh McCown with being out of the league completely, then coming back and add a few more years onto his tally.
That is a great model to follow. And you're right. I mean, if he can just get another good game or 2 out there, it doesn't even have to be as good as it was against the Jets, but just serviceable. Because before, he was atrocious. He was 1-5 as a starter with a 68 quarterback rating. I mean, that's why he didn't have a team before, and Buffalo was just able to pick him up. But another halfway decent performance or two, and he will be in the league for a lot longer. So
now I will say this: there is something I'm sure about being out of the league, getting that different perspective, and going in there and sort of resetting your career. The pressure's off. He's already been out. He's got nothing to lose at this point, and he's got nothing to lose on that football team. And let's just go there now and make things happen, and not worry, so much. And obviously he let loose in that game, played great. And I don't know what was going on with the Jets defense. The Jet defense was pathetic. They basically gave up, which is not a good sign for Todd Bowles, their head coach.
It really does have to be an interesting experience for a guy that was a 5-star recruit at USC, just like a star by the time you're 21 years old, playing at that time. That was their NFL team when they were still really relevant, not so much now. Puts up huge numbers and all that. And you probably have this expectation that you're going to be an NFL star. And when that doesn't happen, I would guess that there has to be some sort of realization. I mean, at one time, he was projected to be the number 1 quarterback in the NFL draft, and then he ends up falling in the draft, and then it doesn't really get going. So, I wonder what that transition is like from realizing, okay, I'm not going to be that, but I can still be around. You know what I mean?
Well, this is a lesson to a lot of, I remember when to kids or whoever, Matt Barkley was, Matt Barkley was, on the cover of Sports Illustrated or Sports Illustrated for Kids as the next thing, the next number 1 pick of the NFL draft, and he hadn't even gone to college yet. Ends up going to USC and having a pretty, decent couple of years though. And then, and should have gone out, early. Probably everyone thought he was going to be a first rounder, ends up going back and then ends up being, I think, a 4th rounder, after that. And just never had the career everyone thought he was going to have. So, it's just amazing how hard it is to figure out who is going to be a great NFL quarterback. And, this kid, everyone sort of pegged him as that guy for some reason, when he was 17 years old. And obviously he never, quite panned out. But yeah, if you can put another 10 or 15 million bucks in the bank, before you get as much out of it as you can, you're not going to be a star, I don't think, but man, get every dollar possible. And then you can just do podcasts for the rest of your life.
Exactly. All right. Well, we will honor a different Chicago Bear journeyman quarterback, and there are many when we get together tomorrow. And we'll flip the script. We'll talk Vikings offense against a very, very good Bears defense. So thank you as always, Sage, and we will talk to you all soon on the Purple Podcast.
Sounds great.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. 44 dead in the California wildfires. Most of the deaths were in Northern California, where Butte County Sheriff Corey Honey says bad information spreading online.
My office has been inundated with calls by people saying that if they just go to the sheriff's office and get a pass, they'll be able to go into the area. And I want to make it clear, my office, we do not issue passes to go into the area.
Cal Fire Chief Scott Jalbert is in Southern California.
The number 1 goal is just to get everybody out of its way, try to save what you can save, and then essentially you have to wait for the fire either to run out of fuel or the wind stop, and then that's when you start making good progress with containing the fire.
The announcement will come later today. Amazon will split its second headquarters between New York City and Northern Virginia. Democrats considering a run for the White House include Senators Cory Booker, Sherrod Brown, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Kamala Harris. I'm Rita Foley.